killing each other much, but in places like Cyprus, the Greeks and the Turks, in India, the Muslims and the Hindus, in Kenya, and Uganda, and all of these kind of places, and all the Asians were thrown out of these places after the English left. So the English never did mix with the local population. What they did was set the local population against each other. When the French administered a place, they wanted to make little Frenchmen out of everybody. So you never find when the French leave a place that the people all start killing each other. All they want to do is go to Paris and be French. So France actually is inundated with people from African territorial background, like West Africa, the French colonies in West Africa, or Ivory Coast, or Chad, or Guinea, or these kind of places. I don't know if the Ivory Coast was French or not, but Guinea was, Chad, and all these other sort of places. Where the French Foreign Legion was supposed to be. Algeria is the only exception to some extent, but Algeria is inundated France too now. So I think that was also part of it. The French believed in mixing of the races. So for instance, even in American movies, as you may know, from seeing Hollywood-type presentations, the French trappers were always mixing with the Native American people, marrying, having mistresses, being, going native, as it were. Unlike, to some extent, the Anglo-American trapper-type people, or the mountain men, if you want to call them that. So the French are always mixing everything in those terms. So it was natural that Paris was seen as a very tolerant center. So after World War I, when particularly Afro-American or black soldiers went over to Europe among the troops, they saw France as a very liberated place where they were concerned. So many stayed on, or had a great affection for Paris as a center. And that extended all the way up. World War I, when you think about it, World War II is in the 1940s, as you know. World War I is in the 19-teens. But, the time between World War I and World War II is only about 20, 25 years. You think, maybe that's how old many of you are, but if you think back 20, 25 years ago from today, that's only like 1985 or something. I mean, that's like yesterday. That's no time at all. 25 years is 1980. I mean, I think Ronald Reagan was coming into office at that time. That's almost like yesterday. So, that period between World War I and World War II was a very short period. So the influence of World War I extended on even after World War II, I think. That's what I'm trying to say. Because that's why people like James Baldwin went back to France, if you want to go, and if you want to put it that way. And that's what I'm talking about. Spent their whole life, basically. But before we get into that, one of the most famous American persons of Afro-American descent, what was her name? The singer who was famous at the Folies Bergère in Paris and stayed on there.
Josephine Baker.
What was her name?
Josephine Baker.
Josephine Baker, right. You may have seen docudramas about her, or movies, or you may have even read books. I mean, how many have ever heard or seen of Josephine Baker? She was a really splendid-looking person, and the French really reacted and responded to her tremendously positively, and she ended up being somewhat of a tragic figure, but for a long time, she was a celebrated persona on the French stage between the two wars. And that came out of World War I. Later on, she got this big mansion in central France, and she had some trouble with husbands, different things like that. And coming back to America, she had problems, I think maybe because she was left-wing or whatever the problems were. But she ultimately started going over the deep end, adopting lots of children and stuff like that. And she had this chateau in southern France where she adopted children from all kinds of backgrounds. She must have had about 20, 25 different young children there that she had adopted. She wasn't like Michael Jackson in terms of supposedly molesting people, or whether he is or not, I have no idea. There was nothing like that ever rumored or anything like that. She was just wanted to protect people, but in doing this, her economic situation collapsed, and she lost everything.